Hey everyone, it's Desiree, and I am here with Spellbinders, and we are starting 2020 with their January card kit of the month. The theme of this kit, of course, is love, because we are coming up to Valentine's Day. So let's look at the contents. The kit is called Love the Moment, and as always, your kit will come in this box. And the first thing that you will see is the card. You always get your card that tells you what the contents are. They give you a project for some inspiration. Of course, you get your cardstock. So you're actually getting a gold and a silver piece of mirror cardstock, purple, a maroon, a pink, a lighter shade of purple, and a white. You get 10 envelopes and 10 card bases, which are the standard A2 size, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and they are side folding card bases. Your double-sided foam lock, what I like to refer to, and your double-sided tape. For this one, you get these die cuts, and they are glitter die cuts. Glitter does come off. It does go all over the place, but glitter's awesome that way, right? Have Swiffer sheets on hand. What's great with those die cuts, there are pieces that can come out, so you can keep them solid or make them outline. You get this pack of gems in maroon, pink, and it's a gold, but there is a pink tint to it. You get this sticker pack, and again, it is also called Love the Moment. There's sentiments, there's images, and there's 3D stickers as well. As always, your 6x6 paper pad. Now remember, this is a paper pad. This is not a cardstock pad. And what I mean by that is these are not 80, 120 pound sheets. These are just below 80 pounds. But they have some beautiful images, and they are perfect for layering for the front of your cards. And this pack, just like all the other ones, has a great mixture of florals, decos, prints that are perfect for either a focal point or a background. You all know, if you've seen these videos before, I am a huge fan of the die cut pack. It is jam-packed. There's double of everything. I love layering all of these. There's florals, there's sentiments, there's strips, there's images, there's animals, there's tags, there's a lot. There's just a lot. So here I'm just showing you most of the items that are in that. And this is the stamp set that comes with your kit. That is a beautiful, very detailed image. So you can see my hand near it just to get a sense of the side. And those sentiments fit beautifully within that block, depending upon how you set it. This is the die set. It creates a cute little automobile, and then of course the balloons can spell love coming off of it. So let's dive right into our cards. So I did a lot of pre-cutting when it came to the backgrounds. And I also did a lot of just throwing things together. One of the things that I do when it comes to this kit, I truly do enjoy this kit. I lay out my card bases, I match up my pattern papers, and I'm literally just throwing things on top. I go through the die packs, pull those items out, depending upon which ones I want to go where, and then I just pile it up and I start filming and putting them together. So that's just a little bit of the thought process. You can see all of my background panels are cut to be 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So I just get this slight white border around the background panel. I'm going to use some double-sided foam tape, and I'm going to prop up the other piece of pattern paper that I have. Now, what would really be awesome too is if you just cut around that edge, so you would have that difference coming through. But you don't always have to tear your papers. You don't always have to fussy cut around your papers, but it is an option. So I've grabbed a couple of the sentiments, and I'm just going to make sure that's going to fit in that area. I'm going to trim down these glittered foliage, greenery, leaves, whatever we want to call them. Yes. And I'm just going to place them in the back. I just want them to be the background so that my sentiment will sit on top. I will use my liquid adhesive. Of course, I'll throw things. But I will use my liquid adhesive to get those secured down, and they're actually going to sit behind. They're going to come out from underneath that floral panel that I have there. Once they're set, I will then work on the sentiment. So again, just a little bit. I mean, it adds a lot of glitter. And again, the glitter does come off. The glitter is not going to stay on those. That's why I'm cleaning my table here. I'm doing very little editing when it comes to these videos. I am speeding them up so that I can show it in one shot. So I'm going to use the double-sided foam that comes in our kit. I do have extras from previous kits, so I always use that up first before I go into a new one. Used a couple of the sentiments, crossed the one over, and that is our first card. For our second card, you can see the two pieces of pattern paper. The vintage photo, of course, makes an appearance throughout this entire video. A lot of people see the vintage photo. Yes, it's brown. Absolutely. But it goes with any color. What I'm using that vintage photo for is to separate each of the images. When you're doing a lot of layering, you want to make sure that each image can stand on their own. So that's why I'm using that. Now, if you want to use a black soot, if you want to use any other color, any other inks that you have, that's fine too. I just do gravitate towards the vintage photo. You can see I took the second piece of pattern paper, I've set it off on an angle, and I used the original piece, again, cut to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. That's the only piece that I measure. So that's why I'll keep telling you that image. The other piece was cut to that too, but again, didn't know. You know, again, I just set that down, used the double-sided tape, and then used that panel as the guide to cut around. Here I grabbed a lot of the die cuts, and now I'm just placing them to see which is going to go where. And as I do this, some of the pieces still make it on the card, and as you can see, some of the pieces do not. The florals usually always do make it on the cards. I'm absolutely in love with those florals when it comes to the die cuts. You can see that terranium's not. That I actually push that off to the side. So even though I keep throwing them onto the cards, they still may not make it. As you're putting the card together, again, your eyes are going to tell you, yeah, this looks okay, and no, that does not. And that's what's happening there. You can have too much when it comes to when you do the layering, and that's what I do with this kit primarily. I love the fact that I can layer and just keep adding. It's like a collage. I do enjoy collaging very much. If you've seen some of my junk journal videos, you can see that I always do that. If I have a tag, if I have a card, I am layering and I am creating those collages. I've got to, try to get into other things, but it is something that I do gravitate. We all have our specialty or our niche of when we make cards. I like the vintage and the old time and the grunge. Sometimes that scares people. While others like the cute little tiny animals or the cute little critters. And don't get me wrong, I like those too. But I just, it's not something that I'll always gravitate. There's always that one thing that we gravitate to. Okay, that was a lot of gabbing. So you can see I was just layering. I put a bow on top of my tag. I have that coming off as well. I'm adding my double-sided tape to the back of the background so that I can set it upon the standard the provided standard A2 size card base from the kit. And that pretty much is that card. I will be pulling in some of the gems, excuse me, and just adding some centers to the larger flowers that I see. You know, if I have those flowers in the background, I'm just making sure that there's a little piece of glimmer that's sitting on those. For our next card, again, more layering. I'm using the double-sided tape to put this onto the card base, and then we'll start layering. For the, I'm not quite sure why I'm standing here. Okay, there we go. Just a simple striped background, and then I only add a couple of the pieces. So I grabbed one of the 3D stickers, and I'm going to quick go around with the vintage photo on that, and I'm going to set that down on the bottom right hand corner of the card. And then the tag is going to come in or come out from behind it. And I am going to put some string on the top, and I will end up using one of the foam squares from the kit just to have that tag propped up, so it's kind of like going to slope. Again, your dimension doesn't always have to be even when it comes to your images. You know, you can have it on an angle. You can have the base glued directly down onto your card base and then have your foam squares coming up at the other end. So again, just to know that everything doesn't have to be matchy-matchy and even. It's sometimes difficult to get used to that, because sometimes that's what we were shown, and that's sometimes how we look. Try to get outside of that box and try new and different things. So for our next card, yep, gotta rip some paper here. So I'm doing what I call a controlled rip. I'm actually tearing along that image. So I have a little tiny piece that's sticking up, and so forth. And I always make sure that when I'm tearing my right hand, if that's the image that's going to be on my card or my image or anything like that, I'm always tearing towards me. Because I don't like that white edge. I mean, now don't get me wrong, we can use the vintage photo, get rid of that white edge, but I do like to have the solid edge. So that means I'm ripping towards myself. I'm going to prop this up using some double-sided foam tape. Now this is a large amount. I would definitely use up and not even have enough if I used the double-sided foam block that comes in the kit. This double-sided foam tape that I am trying out right now is by scrapbook.com. So far good. So I'm just placing that around, making sure that it's solid. I will remove the release paper and I will set that up onto my pattern paper background. So I have this deco print coming out from behind it. Now, one of the things that I did notice that I'll mention is that panel that I actually tore is upside down on this panel, which is fine. No one can tell. You probably didn't realize it, or maybe you did, but if not, I told you. And that's okay. There's a lot going on there that it's going to be unnoticeable. I'm going to use some of the sentiments, and I've tucked the travel one in behind so that it's coming out from the torn paper. Same thing with the inspire, create, and dream. And then the final sentiment is going to cover that small white spot. I'm going to add some gems to that card, again, just to add some sparkle. And that is that card. So for our next one, this is some of the images and even the die. You know, you're creating a car, a vehicle, and it's a nice sports car. So you can make masculine cards from this kit. So that's what this one is going to kind of represent. You don't always have to use the florals and so forth. So just by using the cards, so that was a lot to say there, and just some dice and some general die cuts, we can get a great looking card that you would want to give or just use as a masculine type card. I'm going to change the size of my pattern papers, and again, I don't measure at this point. The backgrounds are measured at 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. Everything else I just keep trimming down. I do not take note of measurements. I hate to measure. It's just something, you know, again, I let what this is going to work. So I just trimmed off a little bit of each of the top and the bottom of the black piece of pattern paper, and I trimmed off some of the pattern paper from the top and the bottom from the deco print. I wanted it at least wide enough for the card, and that's what I used to make that measurement. I'm going to set that down right along the edge of that pattern paper, and now I will add the cards coming off of that banner, and then I'm going to tuck the oh my god, I can't remember what they're called. Alright, we'll just call them dice right now. Which they're dominoes. That was it. Okay. You can see I did not use the vintage photo for this. You don't have to in this case. We do have the difference in the color from the ivory to the white, so these items can stand out on their own. But even if you did use the vintage photo, that would be fine as well. It would just actually make them more prominent. For this card, I'm just going to cut down this panel, again, not measuring, just trimming down to what I think would look good. I'm going to use the double-sided foam tape so that I can place this on an angle. And again, just to give it another piece of layer. You don't have to use the die cuts as the only items to layer with. Use your pattern paper. Cut it up in different size. Or different sizes, different shapes. And you can layer those as well to give your card dimension. The concept of dimension doesn't only mean using foam tape or adding thicknesses. It simply means is as you layer everything, even if you use no double-sided tape, you're adding dimension because those items are getting higher and higher. And as you put your focal points, those other items kind of just blend in the background. I hope that kind of makes sense. When you do that layering, you can see as all of this, that piece, that marble piece that I've cut is now gone into the background. It's helping to make these pieces come forward. So that's where your eye is going to be drawn. That's at least that's how I work with layering. When it comes to something of this nature, when I work with this kit. I'm going to take a couple of the foam squares, I'm going to cut them in half, and then use my liquid adhesive down the center of the butterfly, and then that will just help give it some dimension on each side of the wings. Excuse me. Okay, so for our next card, kind of soft colors went with the purple and the gray tone. I am also a fan of the black and white look, the monochrome. So by having the marble in the background and using the monochrome up on the top and still using the same sentiment with the background of the pattern paper, that was a lot to say there, by using the monochrome, it does help for make that stand out when it comes to that sentiment. Wow, that was a lot there. So this card, very simple, very quick. Not much layering to it. Use the pattern paper. Again, we can let those designs work on their own. We don't have to use all of the fancy pieces. By just layering your cardstock or your pattern paper, that is giving you design on your cards. And you can do multiple layers with that. So something to consider, something to think about. I'm just going to set that sentiment down in the bottom right-hand corner, and then I'm going to place the banner going on an angle right across from that using my liquid adhesive. I'm going to use I'm going to cut up that block just to add a small piece of double-sided foam square to the back of that so that it will stay propped up. I'm going to get my background panel set onto my card base for our next card, because there's going to be, you know, lots of layering going on here. I fell in love with the butterfly sheet, of course. Again, if you've seen some of my previous videos, I am a fan of butterflies. And feathers. So I'm going to just cut this down. I'm just going to use my scissors to trim it and get different shapes from that piece of pattern paper. I'm going to come in with my vintage photo and I'm going to go around those edges, again, to help make them stand off, give them the ability to stand on their own, I guess I want to say. Oh. It makes each piece, if you use any ink around the edges, it helps to make that piece stand out on itself. It helps to draw the eye so the eye will see everything. God, I hope that makes sense. And again, it's just something that I see and the way that I view when I layer all of these pieces. Somebody may have a different opinion, or I may not be using the correct terms. But it's the best way that I can explain it as to what I'm doing for this. So now we're just going to pull in the liquid adhesive and the double-sided foam tape, and we're just going to go to town and layer. You're going to see a lot of pieces. This one I think has the most when it comes to the layering. But the way that they're placed, the way that they're put onto the card, they're still each unique on the card. You can still see each piece coming through it. So I'm going to take the tickets and I'm just going to place those in from behind the vase. I'm going to tuck a butterfly right there. And then I'm going to come across with one of the banners to help break out and identify the top of that vase. And that is that card. So for our next one, I love this pattern paper, but I also love that the way that it V's in on each other. So I wanted that to be somewhat in the center. It's not perfectly centered. Again, I didn't measure, I just went with what I saw. I'm going to use some double-sided tape to adhere that onto the pattern paper with the little terraniums all over. It's not perfectly placed. It is set on an angle towards the upper left-hand corner. Once I had that set, I'm going to get it ready with my double-sided tape, and I'm going to start layering my pieces. So I'm going to start out with the sentiment, and that's going to, I'm actually lining it up with that block. So it's even. It looks like it's actually part of that piece of paper coming off. I'm using some black and white florals and some more butterflies, and just looking at how I can get that floral to come from the back of that piece. Using more of those butterfly blocks to build from behind that sentiment. Now that they're set, I will just lift up the corners and add a little bit of glue behind. It's okay that the pieces may be getting bent. They'll flatten out because I'm using my liquid adhesive. But that's how I get everything to secure down once I have it all layered together. I'm going to set that down onto the provided standard A2 size card base. And that is that card. So for this section here, I'm just creating a blended background using my Distress Oxides. Now, I started out with Tattered Rose. I am using one of my makeup blending brushes. Changed my mind. I went over it with Worn Lipstick and came in with Aged Mahogany. Let it dry, added some big droplets of water, and I just let it go. I let that sit for about a couple minutes, and then I lift up the water. I try not to do it right away. I'm going to use this block, this stamp. Now, it is a solid piece, so it's not like I can get that set and then put the sentiment inside. You do have to do the 2 steps. This is so detailed and so beautiful. I kind of wanted this just to stand off on its own. So I am going to use my VersaFine Black. I am going to prep my page because I don't know. Well, I tested it, but something always fails. I don't know because I want to use my clear embossing powder over my VersaFine Black after I have this stamped. I want this to be raised just a little bit. But this is extremely detailed. And of course, this is why I use a stamp positioner, because that bottom piece did not stamp correctly. So I'm constantly making sure that piece is where it was, stamping over, and now I've got that image. I'm going to use my Recollections Clear embossing powder, and then once that's set, I will heat set. So I'm going to put this back into my stamp positioner, and I'm going to stamp the sentiments. It's the little things in life. And I just love that saying. So, you know, we like to say, don't sweat the small stuff. Sometimes we have to sweat the small stuff, because sometimes they're the best moments. So you can see the shine, you can see the detail. I'm going to use my liquid adhesive to adhere this onto my card base. And this was cut to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So it will cover the entire card front. I will come in with some gems, and I'm going to place them strategically inside those big water droplets. So the larger ones I can pick up with my fingers. Those smaller ones, that's why I have my craft knife there. So I am going to use both the pink and the gold. And I'm going to be using the different sizes. And again, just putting them strategically inside those big water droplets kind of somewhat turns them into, I guess, flowers maybe. Could be. Never know. But just placing those around. Because there wasn't much done to that card. We created a blended background. I chose my oxides. Choose what you have in your stash. And then I just stamped that image. So here's a review of the cards that we made using the Spellbinders card kit of the month. And again, this one is Love the Moment, and it's for January of 2020. It is, of course, their first one for the year. So I do hope you enjoyed the projects that we made using this kit. As always, the links to their blog, their gallery, their shop, and also the link to where you can find all of their subscriptions will be linked down below. If you have any questions or comments, please make sure you leave those down below as well, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I want to thank you so much for stopping by and watching this extremely long video, even though it was always sped up. But I do hope you enjoyed it. I do hope you got some ideas, whether you are a subscriber or whether you can use items in your stash. If you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe and be a part of my group. Make sure you ring the bell because then you'll know when the next video is ready for you to watch, and also hit that thumbs up. Again, everyone, please enjoy your day, but always remember what's most important for me. Always be creative.